Greetings, programs, and welcome to another episode of the Awesome Friday podcast. It is Awesome Friday on a Sunday, as it's going to be for the moving forward. I'm here with Simon, and my name is Matt. And this week we're talking about new science fiction movies, Blood Red Sky and Settlers from Netflix and IFC Films, respectively. Say hi, Simon.
Hello, I'm very, very excited to talk about these two films because I've watched them both within the last 24 hours. In fact, I watched 3 movies yesterday, and those were 2 of them. So, I'm very excited about both of them.
3 movies
Also,
in a single day. Who could live at that speed?
3 in a day, and that's more than I've watched in the last couple of weeks. So I was pretty happy. The third being what's that film you like? Wolf Walkers.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's a lovely film.
Pretty good. But no, the 2 that we're going to talk about are both very specific kind of sci-fi, and I think my favorite kind of sci-fi I'm discovering is genre but sci-fi.
Sure.
And both of these are genre but sci-fi.
These are also both notably locked in a single place but sci-fi, which I quite like.
I love bottle movies. I always have. So yeah, that they were both made for me specifically.
Well, I think we're going to just dive straight into discussion with spoilers, dear listeners. So if you haven't seen either of these films, Blood Red Sky is on Netflix worldwide, as far as I know. So if you have Netflix, go watch it. And Settlers has been released on demand by IFC Films. It should be available definitely in Canada and the United States, and I believe other territories as well. And I think it's only like $5 to rent and 15 to buy in Canada, at least. So definitely go check it out. Because from here on in, we're talking spoilers. And Simon, why don't you start with a quick summary of Blood Red Sky?
I would love to, because I'm going to quote your review, actually, which I caught earlier today as well, because this Blood Red Sky is a plane hijack movie where at some point the hijackers realize this isn't the movie they think they're in. I'm totally still, and it's snakes on a plane, but not played for laughs, and vampires instead of snakes, or singular vampire, because we see at the beginning there's a woman brilliantly played by a German actress called Peri Baumeister, and there's one point you should know about this, is that my Netflix defaulted to the English overdub. You should turn that off immediately, because the movie is a German production, but it's a mixture of German and English, and the German has subtitles, and you are going to miss a lot of the performance if you overdub, and the overdub is not good. So go German. Anyway, she's flying to New York to get this revolutionary drug, we think, that's going to stop her turning into a vampire. And we see herself at the beginning injecting herself and wearing makeup and a wig to very carefully plan this journey, to plan this like 10 hours or so in an airplane so she can have this life-changing medication. And we find out through a couple of flashbacks later on how she became a vampire. But the focus is it's her and her son, who knows she's a vampire, on this airplane flying to New York from Europe. But the spanner in the work is a bunch of delightfully crazy hijackers, including Dominic Purcell. Dominic Purcell maybe filmed for like half a day, and I really like him. I really, really like him. He always looks like he's having a good time. I know, Matt, you love Legends of Tomorrow, and he's always having fun in that. But the terrorists are actually a really interesting mix of slightly crazy and very much extremely crazy. And that actually, at the beginning, it feels a bit cliched, but it's actually there for a reason. So to jump ahead, basically our vampire character decides to fight back against the terrorists. And things happen. Things happen that result in a plane full of vampires being landed by a guy with one hand in a European airport. But then you think the movie's going to end close to that point, and there's a very nice kind of coda last act as well. It's just a lot of fun. I had so much fun watching this movie, and as you know, Matt, fun is pretty much my prime directive at the moment when it comes to do I think a movie is good or not.
I mean, fun. I mean, most movies. I think most movies should be fun. Not to
Mhm.
eliminate like heady dramas and such, but like generally speaking, I want movies to be fun. That's
Mhm.
it should be. I mean, what good is a movie about vampires fighting hijackers in the sky if it's not at least a little bit fun?
Absolutely. Uh, what I there's a lot about this movie I really love, but I texted you midway through to sort out the audio options, and you mentioned that the main actress is in, and by that point I was only about a third into this movie. I didn't really predict that you really meant that she was in on this. Like, she is phenomenal
Oh
in
yes, it
this
is.
movie.
It is what a critic might refer to as a committed performance.
Like, she
uh,
is.
Especially once the pretense is dropped. One of my favorite things about this movie, maybe favorite things, but one of the things I really like about this movie is that in the very beginning, it's actually not clear that she's a vampire. It's clear that she's ill. She's very skinny. She's wearing a wig. She's wearing makeup. She's giving herself doses of medication, but it's not really clear what's going on. Now, obviously, you know what's going on because it's in the marketing. But
Mm.
I really like that the setup that she's obviously quite sick and fighting with something, but like the injection she gives herself in the airport causes a reaction, shall we say, that's not just like cancer meds or painkillers. Like she has like a visceral, like physical reaction to it. So you know something's not quite right. And it's not until really the second act that it's revealed that she's a vampire. And I think that whole setup is handled really, really well. I think if you didn't know going on, it would be a very pleasant surprise. I kind of dislike that they spoiled it in the trailers, to be honest.
Yeah,
Um,
it was very much, like you said, part of their marketing of it. That's an interesting point because I didn't even think of that. I knew from the very, very, very beginning that, oh, okay, she's a vampire trying to hide she's a vampire.
yeah,
But there isn't actually anything in the movie that tells you that. I only knew from the main splash page on Netflix that's like, yeah, there's a vampire on a plane.
yeah, pretty much. And I think for for a society that's now so averse to spoilers, it's weird when it's just like, yep, vampires. Like, it's definitely a thing that it's just in the marketing, and it's a whole other discussion.
I don't feel I lost anything by knowing that. It's
No, I
just an
mean me
interesting
neither. I
point.
mean, it's a B-level genre exercise. It's got to be some kind of monster going on.
Yeah.
But what I was trying to say, I think, was that Perry Baumeister is really like once the wig comes off and the
Mhm.
pretenses are dropped, like he goes like full animalistic. Like the further that you get into the movie, the further she gets into being a vampire, and not like Nosferatu vampire, but like, I mean, what?
It's pretty Nosferatu
In some ways it
in
is, but
looks anyway.
it's also a lot more animalistic. It's not like
Yeah.
suave, dapper people who are very
No.
seductive. It's very
Sparkly teenagers.
yeah, it's not
Not so
sparkly
many.
teenagers. It's I mean, in some ways it's closer to a zombie movie
Hmm.
because some of the resulting vampires are quite
It's
animalistic.
interesting it's interesting you said that because at the end the first thing I thought of was how much it reminded me of Wreck, the Spanish zombie bottle movie where they're stuck in an apartment block,
Hmm.
and the behavior of the zombies and that and the behavior of the vampires in this is almost identical.
Yep.
The
Um,
the animalistic things she did so well because she doesn't you don't see her going up these levels. It's a very subtle thing that she kind of regresses into this animal stage, this feral stage, and at the end, you really believe that she's kind of devolving into this beast. And it's interesting too because the film very much wants you to empathize with her at the beginning and be on her side.
I think it
And
wants
even
it. I think it wants you to empathize with her the entire way. I mean, her whole
yeah,
arc is that she is fighting against this thing because she knows if she doesn't,
yeah.
it'll just consume her.
But that's
Um,
what I mean. At the end, you haven't changed that empathy. So at the end, you're empathizing with this absolute feral, terrifying monster. who
Yeah.
at the very, very end is completely like unleashed.
Yeah.
But there are so many ways this film could have been terrible. And I think it between the way it was acted, I really like the dynamic of the terrorists as well. And the choreography of the action as well, I thought was really, really good.
Yeah. I also think that like this is one of those films where there's a whole bunch of basically B movie actors who show up and you're like, oh hey, it's that guy.
Yeah.
Like Graham
Graham
McTavish,
McTavish.
who shows up, who's
Yeah.
like the commander on the ground, because the first thing that happens is the plane lands, and then the rest of the film is told in flashback. But also again, Dominic Purcell, and also, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the O with a line through it, but Danish actor Roland Moller, I believe, Moller.
Who was he?
He's the terrorist who is wearing the wetsuit with the shoulders exposed. He shows up in genre stuff all the time.
Right.
And then also Alexander Shear, who's 8-Ball, the psychopath guy.
Oh my god!
Like he's the terrorist who's a total psychopath. He starts the movie as a flight attendant, and the second thing he does is stab a man to death, and the third thing he does is basically dance through the aisles covered in blood, telling everyone else to not leave their seats. It's pretty.
He's the terrorist who the other terrorists with guns who have killed people are like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
or like, what are you thinking? And
Yeah,
they're
like,
actually a bit weirded out by it.
Every other terrorist is basically like, just can you take it down like 2 notches?
Yeah,
just like but he's so much fun in the movie that like you obviously he's terrifying, but you don't want him to take it down a notch. And when it comes time for someone to become a vampire, obviously it's him, right?
I was worried at the beginning that first of all his character stereotype, when he's under like in this was a flight attendant and he's very much playing up to the camp aspect of that, and then when he turns full psychopath at the beginning, I was like, well, this is so jarring. Like his first death, the first person that he kills is so incredibly over the top and graphic. It feels completely out of place, but then that is used all the way through. Like it's genuinely there for a reason. So of course, when he turns into a vampire, and he does a great job. The makeup and effects in this are fantastic as well, and he does a great job underneath it all.
Yeah,
but he's really in it too.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say repeat what I said to you earlier today. That my favorite part of the whole movie was when she is. Like they're having a fight in the cargo hold of this plane. There's a car and they're fighting on top of this car. And there's one moment in the middle of this choreographed vampire fight where they kind of just crouch and at each other. And it's like 4 shot reverse shots. And it's just like, for about 5 seconds.
Where they just do like intimidation displays back and forth for several seconds. It's something else.
It's really good.
Yeah. I'm going to say there's a lot of things about this movie that I like. I actually, in particular, like the dynamic between Nadja and her son, Elias. I thought the kid who plays Elias, whose name escapes me, Carl Anton Koch.
Carl Anton Koch.
Yeah, he's quite good. And like a movie like this that's very centered on a child actor can often be brought down by that child actor. And this is not the case. He's very, very good, especially towards the end where he has to make the hard choice. And, anyway, I still didn't like the movie as much as you did. And I can tell you pretty much exactly why.
Okay, go
and the reason is, so the first thing that happens in the movie is that the plane lands, and something's weird immediately because Graham McTavish is there and a ton of soldiers, and something's happened on this plane. And the kid escapes. And as they're talking to him, he flashes back to the flight. So you are watching the story through his flashback. And then in the story, a few times when Nadja goes through something significant, that's the mother, the vampire, she flashes back to her origin story. Now, I'm going to say I think the origin story is very interesting and unique. But, and I honestly don't know how you do the movie without them. But the flashbacks bring the movie to a dead stop. Every time, except for maybe the last one. But the first one in particular, which comes in the middle of what should be the reveal of her as a vampire, brings the movie to a dead stop. And like, I'm not saying I dislike the movie. I'm just saying that that is a situation that I think maybe you should have had a second look. Like, because at that point, every time a flashback comes up again, except for maybe the last one where like, so there's several flashbacks where she's in a car and her husband is killed by a vampire and she's bitten and she becomes a vampire. And in a later flashback, she like goes back to the house and confronts an older vampire who lets her know that she'll never be able to defeat the evil inside her, and she kills it. And it's a very sort of triumphant moment. And that one really works in context with what's going on in the sort of main plot. But every other one is a big momentum shift away from what's happening in the main plot, and I found it really distracting.
Oh, interesting. That I didn't have that experience at all. What did amuse me is that we were at one point we were going for Inception level flashbacks within flashbacks.
Oh, and there's definitely flashbacks within flashbacks in this movie.
Yeah, the first one when she's been shot and she's on the ground, and so we think she's been very much killed, and so that flashback is like starting to tell us why she's about to get up again. I didn't have a problem with it with any of the flashbacks like you did, but I was enjoying it so much. Maybe it didn't really slow down too much for me. And again, the last flashback was interesting too because it's the same in the original Wreck. It's a religious thing as well. The vampire zombie things are a religious like infection. Mm-hmm. So another similarity, but no, that didn't. I didn't get the same feeling in Slow Down. I see exactly what you mean, but for me, it was less of an issue.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. And like I say, it's not that I didn't like the movie as a result. I just like I kind of wish it would have been more impactful if that whole reveal of her surviving the gunshot had not been interrupted. That one in particular, I think, is the worst one. I think they get better as they go along, but the first one in particular really stops the movie for me.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Did you spend a lot of that movie, like I did, going, Dominic Purcell's coming back. He's going to be like the Uber vampire. He's going to be crouching in the corner. And then they have a fight and she bites him. She tries to kill him, but doesn't quite kill him. So he starts turning into a vampire. So she takes a regular old knife and jams it into his heart. And everyone at home is like, it's not going to work. That's just a knife. He's going to come back as a vampire. And then there's a close pull out of Elias takes the knife out of his chest later to prise the washroom door open. And you're like, okay, so now that injury is going to heal. He's coming back as King Vampire. And then he never does. He just has his half a day on set.
Yeah, I kind of like that, actually. I like that, like, one thing I think we always forget is that vampires, like, if you ask someone how do you kill a vampire, they say things like garlic, silver, stake through the heart. But the actual answer is however the fuck you want. They're physical. They're fictional. Like you can kill them however you want. So I sort of like that actually killed him, and you can rationalize it away too by saying like he wasn't turned yet or whatever. But I just like that it worked, and I don't begrudge Dominic Purcell having like his fun couple of days on set. And honestly though, like because his character was really the like not the good guy, but definitely like the more noble of the terrorists. So it was definitely more threatening to have Alexander Scheer as like the lead bad vampire. Because if Dominic Purcell had come back, that it would have been a different movie, basically.
Yeah.
And
I if it was a choice to subvert, maybe the director knew people like me would be watching and giving us clues and then just subverting the whole thing. I love that as well. Just any kind of originality is good.
Yeah. But all in all, I think it's a fun movie. I think it's a really fun movie. One of my current favorite things about Netflix is that we are getting a big influx of media from other regions, like lots of German. We're in the middle of watching an Icelandic mystery show right now, which is very good. And I really hope that Netflix keeps like germinating this content around the world because I think it's good for everyone.
Germinating, see what you did there. Very nice. Yeah, it was nice to hear multiple accents, multiple languages, and Europeans approach B-movie vampires and zombies in a different way to American producers, definitely. So there was a nice European lilt to the whole thing, and then Dominic Purcell's in the middle of it all, just earning his money. But so my wife watched this. This may surprise you, Matt. You know my wife well. She doesn't watch anything that's remotely scary or filled with any kind of tension. And she watched this with me, and she is convinced, and she loved it as well. She's convinced that Elias, when he's kicking the 8-ball out of the plane right at the end, the chief vampire, she's convinced that he snagged Elias's toe, that he bit his toe, and that because he was looking so gaunt at the beginning when he's taken off the plane, he's shot from behind, and when you see his face, he's incredibly like dark-eyed and gaunt. So she's got a theory like sequel's going to be vampire Elias.
I mean, if the movie gets a sequel, I fully expect that to be the premise.
I hope it does.
Also, just because it also makes sense, right? Like that he would now have to be, and also because the other guy whose name I can't remember, there's a whole other character in this movie we haven't even talked about, who's like the one good human who's on their side. His name is Farid.
Farid.
He's played by Kais Sati.
He's great.
He's also quite good. So, and he's at the end of the film, he sort of takes, not custody, but Nadja has made Farid promise to take care of Elias. And so the next movie could, if they do another movie, I'm sure it'll be another, locked room action spectacular, but it could also just be like, let me in or let the right one in a way with, adult human looking after child vampire.
I mean, I'd watch that. Absolutely. Sorry. Are you on? I'm just on the, I typed in Blood Red Sky cast so I could talk about them because I don't remember names. If you go to Blood Red Sky cast in Google and scan to the second scroll along the top, one of the vampires is listed as ex-British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, which I really appreciate.
Wait, what?
Actually, if you go to the Blood Red Sky cast on Google and scroll to the next line, next to Leonie Brill, and between Leonie Brill and Roland Muller is Gordon Brown, who was Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and lots of people disliked him, and he's listed as one of the zombie vampires or people.
So he is. That's
which really pleases me.
Amazing.
That's how British people show their dissent, is by editing in ex-prime ministers into Netflix vampire movies, the cast list.
Yeah, it's quite it's quite petty in a way.
So petty
that I enjoy. Well,
I would love more. Yeah, I'm with you. I'd love more of this. Hopefully, Netflix can give some AA films like this for more genre horror, more of a boost. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, well, I think we can close out on Blood Red Sky by saying that we both enjoyed it. Simon, maybe a little more than me, but we both liked it, and we both recommend it. And it's on Netflix. So, like, do you not? Who doesn't have Netflix?
Exactly. That is a movie. This whole thing about just movies appearing at home is still kind of blowing me away. That movie would easily have been like an underwater style AA release a couple of weeks in a cinema here that we would have gone and seen and spent a huge amount of money buying food to eat while we watched this thing and loved it. And we can just turn it on and watch it on our TVs. That's just a normal thing that happens now. Quiet Place 2 is now on Prime like weeks after it came out in the cinema.
Yeah, I mean, we're still in the midst of a pandemic, so it makes sense that stuff is coming to home.
I love it though. I'm all for it.
If anyone from Warner Brothers is listening, it'd be nice if your screeners were available at home, given that your films are all going to be.
You can't say this, but I'm going to say it. To withdraw online screeners and to insist it has to be in person is so backwards. Warner Brothers, you should be ashamed of yourself. Not just for the people who don't want to go into cinemas because of the pandemic that's still happening, but all the any kind of reduced ability reviewer, any kind of reviewer with a disability who is a huge effort to actually get into theaters to see your stuff. They should be able to just watch it at home. There is no reason at all that you can't send screener links out. just because you think things are finished, you
Well, and
should still be
also
able to do
like
it.
the next big Warner Brothers release is Suicide Squad, and there, as far as I understand, there are not home screener links, but that film will be on HBO Max and Crave and or Premium Rental in Canada the day it's released. So it's not
But
like it's
that's
not going to
just
be online.
pure. That is just pure stubbornness, and it's stupid.
Yeah.
There, I'm saying that Matt isn't, obviously,
Yeah.
for contractual reasons.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
yeah. Um, also, just the ability to watch screeners on my own time has really helped me accelerate the blog quite a bit. So, yeah.
Wait, you don't
Anyway,
do this full time?
it feels like.
But when I read the blog, it feels like someone's writing for it full time.
It sure
If
feels
only,
that way.
is there, maybe you can mention later if there's a way to help finance that.
There is. Listen to the end to find out. Patreon, coffee, PayPal. Anyway,
It's a nasty coffee you got there.
it is. Well, shall we move on from Blood Red
Yes.
Sky to another movie that we both enjoyed? Again, Simon probably more than me, but I liked it anyway. Called Settlers, by first time featured directorial effort by Wyatt Rockefeller, who, yes, is one of those Rockefellers.
Okay, you do the summary this time. You go.
Yeah, so Settlers takes place on Mars, and in the beginning we start out with a family played by Johnny Lee Miller, and Brooklyn Prince as his daughter, and Sofia Boutella as his wife, and they're living a sort of a rough life, like a homestead life, on this modular farm on Mars. It's very moody and very interesting, and then some other people show up, and the most of the first act really makes it clear that like there aren't really any people around, but then some people show up. And the main person who shows up, the main person who survives the first confrontation, is Sofia Boutella and Brooklyn Prince survive as Ilsa and Remy, the mother and daughter. And then the only person from the bad guy's side who survives is Jerry, who's played by Ismael Cruz Cordova, I think his name is. And they are, from that point on, they're basically forced to, he has all the guns, he has all the power, so they're all forced to live together. He says that the farm was originally his parents. And there's some indication that that's true, that maybe Johnny Lee Miller and Sofia Boutella have like taken the farm from them for reasons that are, again, talked about later in the film. But basically it becomes this very tense, very slow moving play about are they going to give Jerry what he wants? It's probably the easiest way to say it. And it's quite good, and it's quite well directed, it's quite well acted, and it looks gorgeous. And there's a robot called Steve, who I think might be my favorite movie robot of this year.
Such a good robot.
Yeah. I'm going to let Simon take it over now because he adored this movie in a way where I just really liked it.
Let me give you a little context. Like, my background's in theatre, directing and acting and stage acting, and I directed theatre and taught drama for a long, long time. So my background's in live theatre. And so when a movie like this comes along, and it is very much a character study, it is like Matt said, it's a play. You could easily do this as a piece of theatre. Well, I mean, there are some elements that would be trickier, but the main character studies is pure theatre. And the best theatre subverts your expectations of characters a number of times. And what I loved about Settlers is that, yes, it was sci-fi, but it was very much about human interaction. And a number of times we are caught out with our interpretation of what the characters are doing and who they are. Like Jerry in particular oscillates between this terrible person, maybe he's better, maybe he's nice. Are we spoiling that? Are we?
I mean, yeah, we're fully spoiling.
There is the last chunk of this movie is interesting in that there's something that happens where Jerry is really shown in our eyes to be this monster, but the worst kind of monster, where you can see he's justifying his actions. Like, he's not a pantomime villain. he's being very, very bad, but you can see why he's being very, very bad. This kind of thing creates this conflict in the viewers that you want to hate him, but on the other side, like you're not justifying anything he's doing, but you can almost see why he thinks it's the right thing to do, even though it's very much the wrong thing to do.
Yeah. I think that's to make things a little more clear. So the main character of this film is actually the young girl whose name is Remy. She's played by Brooklyn Prince for the first 2 acts, and then by Nell
Tiger Free
in the 3rd act as an older, well, as an 18-year-old. She goes from being, I think, 10 to 18.
Mm-hmm.
And the end of the first act is really the death of her father, played by Johnny Lee Miller, and the end of the second act is really the death of her mother, played by Sophia Boutella. And so, really, it's about her relationship with Jerry. And the whole second act is really can be driven by this one question, which is, will Ilsa give him what he wants? And then the whole third act is, will Remy? And it's very interesting to watch it play out from Remy's point of view the whole time. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, I mean, like, you can see why Jerry's doing the things he is doing. And the one thing he basically wants to procreate. Like, he wants to, like, when he shows up, the farm is sort of in disarray, and he's like, I know how to make it green. And then by the third act, like, it's green again. Like, it's clearly doing, but it's thriving. And his next step is to procreate. And nobody wants to do that with him, obviously, because he's a villain. No one is exactly innocent except for Remy in this film. But he wants to procreate, and she doesn't want to. And it leads to conflict, shall we say.
It's awful. That scene.
The whole scene is really awful.
Awful. And fair play to the actors involved. That could not have been an easy scene to film. And I haven't seen Ismael Cruz Cordova in anything, but he was so committed to this. And in fact, the whole cast, I was blown away by everyone, especially Sophia Boutella. Like, I've only seen her in kind of action-y stuff. I haven't seen her in anything dramatic before. And I thought she was amazing in this role. In particular, her husband, who she very much loves, gets killed, and then there's a moment later where she and Jerry get intimate, and it really, really bothered me. It really, really bothered me because, first of all, we know that Jerry has lost someone that he probably loved as well, and he's suddenly flitting between the two people. But to see Ilsa, Sophia's character, go from loving and missing her husband, telling her daughter how much she loved him, and then becoming intimate with Jerry, I really hated it. In fact, I thought the movie at that point was going in a different direction, and I didn't believe it at all. I was really disappointed. But this builds and it builds, and there's a moment where her true intentions comes out, and everything suddenly slots into place, and all these little things she'd been saying to Remy, because we are seeing it from Remy's point of view. We're not getting full explanations from Ilsa. We're seeing her heartbreak, and we're seeing these snippets of Ilsa saying, you just got to trust me, and this and that and the other. But when she makes her play, because Jerry said, I'll stay for 30 days, and then on the 31st day, I'll put my gun down. If you want me to leave, I'll leave. And he keeps to his word. But that's her play. And unfortunately, Jerry has kind of maybe predicted this might be her play. And her actions and her acting of those actions was very, very subtle up to that point. But at that point, they all sort of fit into place. And so that was a very satisfying moment. I was really, really happy to see that happen. And that's kind of how I feel about the whole movie. It was very, very much slower than the trailer. The trailer makes it look like an action movie. It's very much not. It has action in that movie, but it is
all the action's in the first act, basically, and then it's very much a slow burn for the rest of the film.
It's a frontier homestead, and there could be a discussion about why is this not just an American farm, but there is an element of not just you don't want to leave, but you physically cannot leave. They're stuck in this, turns out they're in this Martian biodome that's part of an effort to add atmosphere to Mars that seems to be failing. So they can't actually go anywhere. So again, it's another bottle movie. But
Yeah.
no, I loved it. Like, what's your take on it? Okay.
And come back to my take on the movie after a brief technical interruption in our
We're
recording
back.
process. My take on the movie is that I liked it. I liked it a lot. I gave it a positive review. Um, and although when I first watched it, I'll admit I was like, oh, I wasn't really sure. I didn't love it when I first watched it, but ever since I did watch it, which to be clear, so my review of the film went up on this past Tuesday, which was the 20th of July. And I watched it right after Tribeca Film Festival, which ended at the end of June. So I watched and wrote about it a long time ago. And then I just, it was after the festival, so I held the review till the release week of the film. Um, and since I've had a chance, obviously, I've to talk to Wyatt Rockefeller, which was a very interesting discussion. And it's sort of been stuck in my brain for that whole time, which is a sign of a good film to me.
Mhm.
So even though at the time I think I gave it like I don't do number ratings on the site, but I gave it a 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd. And I don't know if I'd quite give it a 4 out of 5 now, but I definitely appreciate it more than I thought I did, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. Maybe you should rewatch it. Give it another look. It's definitely something I could rewatch it straight away, like knowing some of the later revelations and how it all fits together. And I didn't know about the time jump as well. I absolutely did not think that Sophia Boutell's character would die. And when she does die, it's just a moment, it's a thud and a silence. It's very similar to how the pig is killed later. Like
Hmm.
there's the sound design is very, very good. And also the color grading makes it look really sort of this Martian Old West kind of look. And it's that you should really take a look at the design of everything. We've mentioned Steve the robot's very, very good, but their modular kind of farm is very cool as well. And the sound direction is really interesting. It's used very, very subtly but very well to sort of raise our tensions and also underline when something bad happens.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the color grading and the sound in particular, because one of the questions I like to ask when I do interview directors in particular, not that I've done a ton of it, but the question I get the most interesting responses of is I try to ask, what's something about this movie that no one's asking you about that you wish they would ask about? And in this particular case, he mentioned it's all these little technical details that he hasn't all these little technical details that he loves. And one of those things was the color grade, because in his words, until you take the blue out of the sky, you're on Earth.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then the sound design was another, and he mentioned that like there's a scene in Remy's bedroom right at the beginning where they added like this the tapping of a wire in the wall to give it like a hollow sound effect, very subtle but hollow sound effect in the room to make it feel empty.
Mhm.
And later, all the wind sounds outside are all Arctic wind sounds, which are very sort of empty and foreboding. There's a very specific sort of haunting sound about them. So I think there's a lot of care and attention placed on those things, and I think it
Yeah.
really worked out.
It must be
Um,
very difficult when you're a director watching your film with a bunch of people. It must be like when you're showing your favorite thing on YouTube and you're just staring at people. It's like, can you hear that? Did you see that bit?
yeah,
Like we worked really hard on this. Like everything, especially he clearly made this on a very small budget and it's very clearly a passion project and it's he wrote and directed it, so it's his vision. So the amount of work that must have got into making it look the way it did, sound the way it did, it really makes all the difference. And the very interested to read that Steve was a mix of puppetry and visual effects as well, and I think that worked brilliantly. And Steve, when Steve has his moment, it could have been funny. There's a moment where Steve saves the day, and it could have been BB-8 with like flicking up his lighter like a thumbs up. It could have been something really, really funny, but it is the fact that it's not funny, it's actually kind of terrifying, is a real testament to how they handled Steve and everything, really.
yeah, and I find Steve really interesting because he has his own. As much as the film really belongs to the character of Remy, Steve has his own arc as to whether or not he's a being with agency, or as Remy seems to treat him like, or if he's just a tool like Jerry says he is.
So the film definitely had, I'm just going to interrupt you because the film definitely had a Star Wars problem with droids. So the more you watch Star Wars, the more you realize, oh yeah, this droid, he's different from all other droids. Like we reprogrammed him, and then you're like, he's really, every droid in Star Wars is sarcastic and has agency. And the moment you see Steve, Jerry's like, oh yeah, he's just a tool. And clearly Steve acts like a puppy. Like this is not a tool. Like Steve is alive at the beginning. Sorry, carry on.
Yep. I mean, Star Wars is the problem where all the droids are slaves, but that's a whole other discussion. But yeah, anyway, I really like that Steve has a whole arc, and the resolution of it is that he is the like being that she thinks he is, and that you hope he is, really. And he does sort of save the day, and he's such an interesting design, having both, wheels and legs, and acting like a puppy dog. And the VFX to like the CGI to puppetry transitions, like it's pretty seamless. Like I'd be willing. I didn't ask how much of it was puppetry and how much was CG, but
yeah, that would be interesting to find out.
He did mention, Wyatt Rockefeller did mention that like the CGI is obviously quite expensive, so they only deployed it when they absolutely had to, which to me means that basically anytime a character is interacting with Steve, he's real. He's a puppet. So, yeah, I mean, there hasn't really been that many movie robots this year, but Steve is definitely top tier. Like, it's basically him and the robots from Space Sweepers, pretty much the two.
Oh my god! Can we talk about Space Sweepers one week on the podcast? Can we have a Space Sweepers special?
Honestly, I'm pretty sure that movie will make at least the honorable mentions from my best of the year. So,
oh my god! If you haven't seen Space Sweepers, it's a Korean sci-fi movie about people who junk like trash. They're basically trash collectors in space.
Yeah,
and is easily one of the best sci-fis of any year. It's amazing.
It's quite good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Settlers is really good, and the more I think about it, the more I like it. So, it comes highly recommended, I believe, from the entire Awesome Friday team.
Yeah, what's interesting again is that I'm finding I don't like westerns as a genre. We've talked about this before. So straight westerns, I don't like.
Yeah, you're allowed to be, wrong.
Wrong. But westerns as a basis for sci-fi, fucking love. Like, clearly Star Wars is a Western base, amongst other things, but as a strong Western. This is very, very much a frontier story, but on Mars. Maybe not Cowboys and Aliens so much, but Back to the Future 3, Western but sci-fi. Love that film. Love how it's a Western with sci-fi elements. So I don't know why I don't like straight westerns. There's one I do like that I keep forgetting the name, that you keep telling me Christian Bale's in it, and maybe it's a train.
No, it's the remake of 3:10 to Yuma. It's an excellent film.
3:10 to Yuma is a fantastic film. I don't know why I like that one western and don't like other westerns, but
it's because you're a silly person. And also James Mangold directed it, and James Mangold makes good movies.
Really?
Yeah.
Didn't he do Quick and the Dead as well?
No, that's Sam Raimi. But James Mangold did Logan, which is also a Western.
It is very much Western. Western, but sci-fi. Again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Western makes a good basis for sci-fi, and Dune as well, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, Dune is the influence, and we should not start talking about it, because I will not stop talking about it.
Okay.
I'm very much looking forward to that film.
So Settlers is a 5-star movie for me. I thoroughly recommend it. It's not an action movie, but if you give it time, if you sit and watch it, and just the performances from everyone are fantastic. I didn't recognize Johnny Lee Miller. I read his name in the credits. I went back and watched his scenes and still didn't recognize Johnny Lee Miller. Like, he is fantastic. He is completely invisible, not just behind a beard, but I didn't recognize him at all.
I mean, he's very reliably good. I immediately recognized him, but I've been watching his TV show for the past 8 years, so that would help. Yeah, here's a hot take: Elementary is better than Sherlock.
Interesting. I've never actually seen Elementary, but I am not on the Cumberbatch train, so I probably believe you.
Yeah.
What makes it better? Give me a one-sentence summary why it's better.
It's more of an adaptation. It
Oh,
takes the stories and adapts bits and pieces of them into its own thing rather than just basically moving it forward 100 years. Like by just recontextual. All Sherlock really does is take the best episodes of Sherlock, take the stories that exist and put them in the present day. Elementary takes the stories of Sherlock as inspiration for characters and then does its own thing in a lot more unique way. Sure, I mean, yes, it's handsome rogue helps police, which is a well-worn genre in American television, but it's a very good version of that. We should stop talking about it because, again,
okay.
I will not stop talking about it.
Okay, fair enough. Catch up and cast it one day.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the end of Settlers. Then, what have you got coming up in the next couple of weeks? You've got any festivals happening?
Yes, actually. The 25th Montreal Fantasia Film Festival starts on August the 5th and runs to the 25th. So I'll be attending that, and I believe you will too, Simon.
I hope so.
Virtually.
Yeah.
The Vancouver International Film Festival is not till October. I don't know yet if I'll have one in September. And honestly, the review situation is a little bit in flux with some of the major studios shifting back to in-person screenings, most of which I can't make because I have a day job. But I do know that there's more Netflix movies coming, and I'm pretty sure I'll be able to see upcoming Disney films as well, like Jungle Cruise and Free Guy in the next couple of weeks. So we will see. Otherwise, I'll have to start coming up with some different ideas for what to write about.
What I like about Jungle Cruise is that you know exactly every beat of that movie, and I am so on board.
It looks like the 1990s version of The Mummy, which is, I think, a perfect film.
Sure.
So if it's even anywhere close to that, I'll be very happy.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. If you did give up your day job and wrote full time, how would you earn money, Matthew?
So it's at this point in the podcast where I'm going to ask you, our dear listeners, for the same things that every podcast asks you to do, which is to like us and subscribe to us and give us a review on your favorite podcasting platform of choice. We are presently available on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, Deezer, Player FM, and Podomatic, and I think there's one more that I can't remember. And if you like what you're hearing and you'd like to help us make more, then there is a Patreon, which you can get to. Sorry, you can support us via Patreon or Coffee or PayPal, and you can find links to those at awesomefriday.ca/Matthew, which has all the links to all the things.
Praise. Come on, we're coming out of the pandemic. You saved all that money from not going out for the last 18 months. So what better place than to give it to us?
And to be fair, the lowest tier on the Patreon is only $2 a month, whether it's Canadian or American. And the lowest tier that actually has exclusive content, such as the full audio of that interview with Wyatt Rockefeller I mentioned earlier, is $5 a month. So,
have you uploaded that? Is that on your Patreon now? The audio?
It is now.
Oh, I will be listening to that definitely.
Yeah, that's I haven't had a chance to do a ton of that kind of stuff, but I'm actually making more of an effort to do it. So,
awesome.
Yeah, I actually still have an interview with some Canadian filmmakers that I recorded in like February that I never posted that I'll probably post next month. The text of which, of course, is on the blog, but the video never got posted. So,
cool.
Yeah. So we're going to close out this second episode of the Awesome Friday relaunch podcast. Simon, where can people find you on the internet?
Just around. Like, I don't do much social media anymore. On Twitter, I'm Temporary Pen, and I have an Instagram that I barely use, but really through the site. You can find me through the site, or my writing website is temporarypen.com, and it's got all my writing on there, including Awesome Friday. But just go through the site. Just go to the site and click on an ad that might be useful to you, and then you can find me through that.
Excellent. And you can find me on Twitter at SmatthewAF. Or just again, awesomefriday.ca/Matthew has links to all of my social profiles, which I
Yay!
use to varying degrees. And with that, I think we're going to call it a night. Thank you
Yep.
ever so much for listening. We love and appreciate you no matter what level of support you're at, whether that's all the money in the world or just listening to us ramble.
Oh, sure. Just listening to Ramble's the most important level, definitely.
Indeed. So, everyone have a lovely rest of your week, and we will see you next weekend.
Bye-bye.